So we're in chapter.
We'll all open the book of Darren.
We're going to open it to the book of E for Ryan.
And we'll see here in the book of Darren Blank order.
Yeah, but we're actually going to do 11.
Oh, we are?
We're chapter 11?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
We'll only do one verse. So I'm not going to go through all the. There's no need for us to go through all of them.
The son of.
Well, it's interesting, but that's like, you know what I mean?
Well, the reason that
We'll do like one part of it.
You explained to me the reason that's like that it's chronologically you can follow it, right? The reason to do the son of Ham, the son of whatever. Right?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that.
No, I'm saying that's why it's not, we don't need to go over it, but that's why it's in the Bible. So that we can genealogically follow it, right?
Yeah, you can genealogically follow it.
Right. But I'm saying
Right.
that's
It's the
no
generations.
study.
Right.
Yeah, there's no actual study part.
Right.
Okay.
Well, actually, there would be. Actually, there could be. But we get so far in depth that would be.
Or more of like the reference that you would go really.
We are going to be looking chapter 11. Okay, one thing we need while we're talking about that, 10, 11 are not chronological. When you look at it, you think it's chronological. So basically, chapter 10 comes out of chapter 11. Okay, so we see 9, the flood happened. Okay, now he's going to list the nations that will come from chapter 11. So I'll explain that more when we get into this next verse. Ryan, read from 1 to 8.
11, 1 to 8?
Uh-huh.
Okay. This is about the Tower of Babel. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. As men moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the men were building. The Lord said, "If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they can plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so that they will not understand each other." So the Lord scattered them from there over all over the earth, and they stopped building the city. Can we keep going?
Go through. Yeah, go to the right.
Okay. That is why it's called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, chapter 10 isn't chronological. It's an amplification of chapter 11 when man is scattered throughout the whole earth. See right there, the table of nations is going to happen. God in 9:1 says, "Go," right? It says, "Multiply and fruitful across the whole earth." And chapter 11, verse 1, we start off seeing they haven't done this yet, right? So what happens is in the ark, everybody comes off the ark. Now God's just given out of chapter 11 is you'll see the scattering of the nations because of the languages, and this is the nations we're talking about here. Okay, so in other words, when we're reading this, don't go 9. Okay, now they're scattered, and then here. Well, what does it make sense?
Okay.
It's not chronological like
Right.
that.
Okay.
Okay.
10 is the amplification of 11.
Right,
Gotcha.
exactly.
Okay.
See, you'll see what I'm saying as we read this. Because it starts off says, "Now the whole world has one language and a common speech. As men moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there." So there was one area that everybody stayed in. They didn't spread out to the nation.
So you're saying these multitudes of people were all following each other to this plain in Shinar?
Basically, when they got off the ark, the people, the descendants that we see written here off of, that we'll get more into, okay, later on when we get into the call of Abraham,
Okay.
all right? Okay, so basically what happened, okay, he tells them back in 9:1, I'll read to you, you don't want to stay there, he tells us what? "And then God told Noah and his sons, saying to them, 'Be fruitful, increase in number, and fill the earth.'" So he's telling them to get off, okay? Well, they got off, but they didn't do that. Okay, that's what they did. They stayed in one area, which was, we know about Ararat, probably somewhere around, and it says that they came, when it says that the men moved eastward, and they found a plain in Shinar, okay? They came eastward, probably the north, probably up somewhere in the Russian area is where they figure where the ark was. It would be
Like Siberia?
Armenia, things like that. In those days,
Okay.
Mount Ararat. So northward, and then they all moved. So but people didn't scatter.
Gotcha.
So what didn't they do?
They didn't follow the Lord's commands.
There you go. So already again, what did men do?
They didn't follow the
Right. Already they didn't. And one other thing too is they all spoke one common language. So to this point, there's all one unity, one language.
No, but that's not a sin.
Well, no, but we're gonna. The point is that you'll see what happens. Sometimes, it's just like anything else.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? When we get too much in common, a lot of problems start happening.
Yeah.
You got a bunch of criminals in one room. You all unity. What happens, right? See what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So that's just so you see the unity of all. I mean, they all spoke one language. Now, most scholars believe the language was Hebrew. It doesn't say that. We don't know that for a fact. They believe the language before is probably, there's a lot of reasons why they think that, all right? And there's going to be a time right now, there will be a time, and most people believe, in the millennial reign, it'll happen during the millennial reign. We're going to look at that. Actually, go to Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 9. In fact, you don't have to. I'll just read it out of here. I'm going to read it out Amplified. That there'll be a pure language again. Everybody will speak one language again. Okay?
Now, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Isn't that technically what everyone is now? I mean, everyone speaks English.
No. But but we still have different languages.
Okay.
There was only one language.
Different languages, just be one language.
There's only one language, and there was only one language then. That was it. One language that everybody spoke. A lot of people said, a lot of scholars believe it was Hebrew, but we don't know that. It was God's holy language, obviously we know. And it says right here, let me read to you in Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 9. I'm going to read it out of the Amplified because it kind of gives it a little bit better. For then, changing their impure language, I will give to the people a clear and pure speech from pure lips, that they may all call upon the name of the Lord, to serve him with one unanimous consent and one united shoulder, bearing the yoke of the Lord. Okay? So, it's a unity thing. So everybody before that time, remember, everybody spoke one language, so everybody could communicate. The whole world could communicate. That sounds really good, but you can really get a lot of problems if you think about that when you're in a fallen world. You know what I'm talking about? If you start to think about some of the things, okay? So there's going to be a time again, just like that, during the millennial reign, that God's going to purify, and there's going to be all one language in order to praise the Lord, and it'll be a holy language. I really firmly believe it'll be it says a pure language. So it'll be some kind of holy, what is it, the Hebrew language? We don't know. But that's probably what the majority of scholars believe it is for lots of different reasons, okay? Verse 2, that's just kind of, so what we see is men were up, they get off the ark, you know what I'm saying? They didn't do what they did, they all moved eastbound, okay? And we're going to look at that. We're going to go back in a little bit to chapter 10, but we're starting here, okay? So as men moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. Shinar, all right, is Babylonia. That's another name. The word is Babylonia.
So these are the Babylonians then?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
All the people, we'll see, there's all the people in the nations right here, all in up there, okay, in Shinar, in Babylonia, okay, this is where...
Well, that's what you even said in there. It was called Babel. And that's where they're at. They went to Shinar.
Right, but we're going to look at what that means. It's different too, okay? But yes, that's part of it. So Shinar is Babylon. When we look at that as Babylonia, okay? Now remember, a lot of we're going to look at this is going to be foreshadowings of things to come too. When we look at this, like everything else, all right? Verse 3 says, "They said to each other, 'Come, let's make brick and bake them thoroughly.' They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar." Okay? So, the reason for this is what they didn't, there was probably no stone there. What's the reason for all this? It's showing that men, even at this point, already knew how to build. They had high technology already again.
They were very intelligent.
Very intelligent, already knew how to bake and make, so they were able to make a massive structure. Okay? They're able to do this. Okay? And the point of this whole thing is, if it's apart from, now you know some of the things it says, like it says, tar, and what did the ark?
They use mortar.
They mortar and tar, okay? And part of the reason when we look at this is the reason for why they use tar and stuff. Just like they didn't believe, where Shinar at that time, where most people believe it was, okay, would have been down at a sea level. So they're saying that we don't believe that God's not going to flood the earth again. So we'll protect ourselves instead of taking God's protection.
That is amazing.
That's part of the reason for why.
That's why they want to build a tower to heaven.
Well, part of that, we're going to look at that, okay? So there was no stone, so they learned how to develop their own bricks. So they're very educated, okay? Just like, when we look at this stuff, it's, we think of these people as idiots. It's just like now. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, okay, now think about it. They're all speaking one language. Now they're able to build things like that. All of a sudden, I don't need God anymore. This is kind of what's happening, when we get so much technology. Okay, I can build things. I don't need God. I'm safe.
That's relevant nowadays.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about. When we look at this, we're going to look at some of that. Okay. Okay. So the ark was the ark was told how to build, what to use by God, covered with pitch, representing God's security and promise of protection, right? 2, the tower was built by man, in this right here in chapter 11, right? The tower was built by man's own instructions, his own strength and covering by asphalt, meaning man's covering and security built by man, not by God. So what we see here is the ark was told how it was built by God, was covered by God, and this building, just like us, was instructed by men. Who was instructed them? It says right there, they said to each other, "Come, let us make." So it was "come, let us," right? So man decided, apart from God, "Come, let us make." So now they decided, we're going to do like the ark was for protection from God, for God's security. Man, this tower was man's security.
And they're also imitating the creation of God Himself. They said, "Come, let us make what a God."
There you go. The lettuce represents a lot of other things too. But you notice that they let us and they take God out of the equation.
Right.
Okay. So the contrast that we're seeing is that God told Noah, "This is how you make this." They didn't even consult God. Let us make separate from God. Let us. There's no. Okay. So see how it's all kind of building up.
Yeah.
Right. So what that's saying is they didn't believe God's wouldn't flood the world again. Part of that thing is that we didn't believe God's promises.
No.
These people started not believing again in God's promises. Therefore, we will build.
Pretty immediate.
It's pretty immediate. Okay, but in the same way, now how can we compare that to nowadays? It's the same way. We can look at a lot of this in the same way. We hear a lot of this. We build buildings that are earthquake proof. Don't we?
Yeah, we do.
We put all the seismic thing. But the thing is, okay, until an earthquake comes along and destroys it, okay, then all of a sudden we're calling out to God. But we really believe we can protect ourselves from earthquakes. Right? But seriously, don't we? Especially in the construction. I work construction trades, and when you work in state buildings, they were so hard in the earthquake. That was a huge thing. The earthquake. It's like, this is ridiculous because as soon as the earthquake's going to wipe this out, but no, they believe they have more power than God Himself, I guess. See, the whole point is, it doesn't matter what we do. God's going to shake the world. He's going to take out anything man builds. And so the confidence is the same thing we're seeing here. They get together. Besides, look, we're going to build this. I don't care what. I don't believe God. God might flood us again. Let's don't take that chance.
Right.
Okay, we're not going to believe His promises. Let's build this up. And it was a very strong structure. We're going to build this up, okay, on our own. So you can see the same thing we kind of just now.
Trust in ourselves and our abilities.
Yeah, go to Jeremiah chapter 51.
Jeremiah 51?
Uh-huh.
Where's Jeremiah at?
It's in the Bible. Isaiah, you'll see Isaiah.
Where is that?
51, 40.
Before or after?
After. 40 through 48. Okay, Karen, you want to read that for me?
Yeah. I will bring them down like lambs to the slaughter, like rams and goats. How Sheshach will be captured. The boasts of the earth, the whole earth sees. What a horror Babylon will be among the nations. The sea will rise over Babylon, and its roaring waves will cover her. Her towns will be desolate, a dry and desert land, a land where no one lives, through which no man travels. I will punish Bel and Babylon and make him spew out what he has swallowed. The nations will no longer stream to him, and the wall of Babylon will fall. Come out of her, my people. Run for your lives. Run from the fierce anger of the Lord. Do not lose heart or be afraid when rumors are heard in the land. One rumor comes this year, another the next. Rumors of violence in the land and of ruler against ruler. For the time will surely come when I will punish the idols of Babylon. Her whole land will be disgraced, and her slain will all lie fallen within her. Then heaven and earth and all that is in them will shout for joy over Babylon. For out of the north destroyers will attack her, and her declares the Lord.
All right. So that's a prophecy of the future Babylon that we saw in Revelation. Wow. See? So what we're seeing is that we see it again, and we see like there's going to be a future Babylon. There's what we think now, same thing.
Didn't Babylon destroy the Israelites?
We're going to be looking at that. That's really good. That's a really good point, Ryan, that you picked that up. We're going to look at that.
Yeah.
They were captives. They were captives. They were one of the captives. Okay, so what we're seeing there is kind of a future prophecy of a Babylon, and it's the future of everything. You know what I'm saying? We see foreshadows. It's kind of like we see now. Don't forget, these people all knew God before. Then again, what did they do?
They walked away.
And they're building their own nation and their own things. What nation were we built on? A nation under God. And we're building our own thing. We don't need God anymore. See how the same thing kind of going? And this unity, we're trying to get unity all together and all, see? All this world unity.
It just repeats itself.
Keeps repeating itself, okay? And then we're going to see, there's a literal Babylon again. We saw Revelation. Okay, that's a prophecy of that. All right. Verse 4 back in Genesis.
Can I read it?
Yeah, verse 4. Says, then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches the heavens, so that we make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth.
So that's blatant outright disobeying God.
Well, first thing, when it says, come, let us, okay, we're going to look at that when we get in chapter 10 a little bit. At the end of this right here, we'll look at this. Some people believe it was, this was Nimrod. Nimrod was the dictator of the tower. Okay, we're going to look at that. Okay.
How do you know that?
We're going to, in chapter 10, we're going to look at that, okay? But some believe it might have been instruction from Nimrod, or this could have been instruction that the people did before Nimrod was even born. So we don't know exactly when this instruction came. If it came from Nimrod when he was the dictator there, or the ruler there, or if it was before, and the people started building this before, okay? So when we look at that, but it was a group of people, and what they did is they let us build again, he said again, ourselves a city, a tower that reaches the heavens, so that we make a name for ourselves. So they're making, so we can make our own God that doesn't tell us what to do and scatter ourselves. We don't want to scatter. We want to be in unity, and we'll make our own God to the heavens that doesn't scatter us.
It's kind of like what we do today, where everyone's kind of like, we have to be one, we have to be united and everything.
Well, what we'll say is that I don't like what God said, so I'm going to build my own tower, my own God, my own temple, and make my own God to say what I want to say, because I don't want to, that's like they said, I don't want to do what God's commanded, scatter across the earth. I don't want to live the way God says to live.
I have one more question.
Uh-huh.
Now, have the days been, the years of people, have they been cut down short yet, or are they still living?
No, they're still living here. Well, not probably 600. They're still living long lives here, though.
Okay. All right.
You see what I'm saying?
So, okay. All right.
Well, they could be, up to living longer lives. But, I mean, I don't know exactly when that break off, you know what I'm saying, how long.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is, did we read past the part that said that their years need to be numbered in less than,
No, that's later on.
Okay.
So, yeah, we're still,
They're
I'm
still
talking.
living long
Yeah,
lives.
people are still living longer. Not necessarily 900 years or anything
But
like that.
still very long.
Right.
Okay.
If you also notice, it's always like, in this, it's always I.
Right.
There, and that's another good point right there. That's another good point here, Corey. So they built, so what they're doing here, we see unity, okay? They don't want a God to tell them what to do, okay? So they built their own religion, okay? We're going to look at that. The place to worship their own God, all right? So what they did is to the heavens. What does that mean, to the heavens? Now this is really interesting. We're going to start off in Leviticus 26. We kind of get the idea of why, what does that mean? Were they trying to reach God himself? Well, obviously not, because why? They said they want to make their own God, right?
I think they're trying to replace God.
Right, they're trying to replace God with their own thing. But isn't it funny how what we do the same things?
Leviticus what, guys?
26 verse 30. Actually, I'll start in verse 27. If in spite of this you still do not listen to me, but continue to be hostile towards me, then in my anger I will be hostile towards you, and I myself will punish you for your sins 7 times over. You will eat the flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters. And we're not going to get into that, okay? I will destroy your high places, cut down your incense altars, and pile your dead bodies on the lifeless forms of their idols, and I will abhor you. So right there he's talking about high places. They're building altars. What's incense represent? The prayers, remember? When they put, for instance, the prayers to the God. When we have the incense of prayer, they put incense of prayer to the God. So they were burning their incense, burning prayer to their gods. And high places, okay? It's like the same thing. The high places, they were building a tower in high places. This is a representation of their idol worshiping. It's part of what it's...
Never a good word in the Old Testament.
It's the high places. Let's look at a couple more. No.
So then, are you saying that they're describing it as a literal thing, or they're describing the tower?
This is literal. This is a little tower was really built. Okay, it was a little. This can get real. We can go to huge,
Because I've heard
humongous.
different stories.
You can hear a humongous study in this. Okay, we're just going to briefly go over. If you want to look on that, you have to look at some other guys.
Gotcha.
Okay, but all religion. I can tell you right now, all religion. Outside of Christianity, all false religion starts right here. This is where it all started from. We're going to look at that, okay? Go to Numbers chapter 22. 39 through 41.
Verse 22.
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, what verse?
39. It says, then Balaam went with Balak to Kerith Huzoth. Balak sacrificed cattle and sheep and gave some to Balaam and the princes who were there with him. The next morning Balak took Balaam up to Baal, and from there he saw parts of the people. So right there again, you see Baal is sacrificing. There's a god Baal. They're sacrificing idols in high places. Okay? We're going to go look at another one. Let's go to Jeremiah. I want to go to Jeremiah chapter 7.
Jeremiah chapter 7.
Uh-huh.
Verse
31. We'll look at. You got it? Someone have it?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, read it.
They have built the high places of Topeth in the valley of Ben Hinnom.
All right. Go a little bit before that, will you?
So 30.
Yeah.
The people of Judah have done evil in my eyes, declares the Lord. They have set up their detestable idols in the house that bears my name, and have defiled it. They have built the high places of Topeth in the valley of Ben Hinnom to burn their sons and daughters in the fire. Something I did not command, nor did it enter my mind. So we keep going?
No, that's fine. Go to Jeremiah 19:5. I'm just trying to give you an idea of.
Mm-hmm. They were sacrificing children, man.
Well, weren't they also sacrificing children back in the days of like Noah and all that? Their sons and daughters?
Can I read 19:5?
Yeah, go before that though. Go to start in verse 4.
4. For they have forsaken me and made this a place of foreign gods. They have burned sacrifices in it to gods that neither they nor their fathers nor the kings of Judah ever knew. And they have filled this place with the blood of the innocent. They have built the high places of Baal to burn their sons in the fire as offerings to Baal. Something I did not command or mention, nor did it enter my mind.
All right. See, so what we're seeing right here is a reference. So when we see they built a tower to the heavens, right, and they're looking for one God, what are they doing? Just what we saw from there goes on. What were they doing? People that they did high places. They burned their sacrifices, all these false religions in high places. It's something they think they're getting closer to God. Has a lot to do with the stars too. That's another whole study. Okay, they're worshiping studying of the stars. You know what I'm saying? They're worshiping the stars. Oh, see. So when we look at this, they're not. It's not. Sometimes we get ideas that they're actually trying to reach. They're going to go to heaven. No, that's what they're doing. They're building their own thing, their own religion. They're to their own God. Okay, set apart from God. I don't need that God. I don't want to spread and scatter. It's like I said, I don't want to live with it. So I'll make my own God up. And I'll burn, and I'll pray to my own God. And that's exactly what was going on here. Okay?
And it's also kind of like what happened before, where they're burning incense and sacrificing their children to gods.
Right.
In the days of Noah and all that. They're just also repeating the same mistakes they did in the past.
Basically, but right here, it's really getting to be more,
Dramatic.
a lot more dramatic. You know what I'm talking about? We're
So
seeing
this tower,
No, because it's first unified
Right.
rebellion.
Right.
Before we just had individual rebellion, this is the first unified.
it's a unified religion. It's a unified. You've got the
They're
whole
all-
world.
and they're all-
You remember
all
before?
together.
Yeah, before the people were scattered. Now everybody's at one spot, one language. And this is a long time. You remember, this isn't like one day.
Right.
This is going for a period of time. You notice how God will see. He's letting this go on. Just like we're seeing now. It's one. Okay. Now remember, these people all knew God before.
Right.
Noah
They walked away
they were
from it.
saved.
Right.
Didn't God save them? And the people, and they started multiplying. But yet the people who came out of those saved people seem to forget. Right. And they forget, and they don't care. They knew. They just didn't keep up with God. I don't care what God says. But every one of these people knew God.
Right.
Okay? Every one of them. Was like one of them didn't know the real God.
That's all I'm asking. So they literally built a tower that was tremendously tall.
Right.
Right.
Right. They were building this huge, humongous tower. That's why they said brick. And the way they built it was becoming a massive tower going to the heavens with altars. And there's
not a figure of speech.
Not a figure of speech. This is real. In fact, there's historical now. They've proven people who said it didn't exist. They found a lot now architectural. You know what I'm talking about? The guys who do the digging.
The geologists and stuff. Right.
Archaeology, lots of that to prove the whole tower. They found all this stuff.
Right.
Okay, so there's no doubt about it that
So this is a tremendous structure. Right?
tremendous structure. There's no doubt
And
about
they
it.
didn't use stone, they used brick.
Bricks.
Made.
That they made, and that makes a big difference. They use things of God, a huge difference. Because it shows too, men will do anything without God.
Right.
And they'll figure a way out to do when they're in unity. They'll figure out a way to do it.
God himself even said that.
Okay, so we kind of get the idea what the high places are, and that's what was going on here. Okay, verse 5, back in Genesis 11, verse 5. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that men were building. All right?
So did he physically come down?
Okay, that's a good question. No, I don't believe it's like what we're thinking. All right? Okay, one thing we want to know, men are prospering real big here. God allows them to prosper in building the tower. We see that. He's letting them do it. He's letting them just like you can look at anything else. We get, all of a sudden God blesses us. We forget about God. We start getting, that's what they're doing. They're prospering. And now I'm getting prosperous. I don't need God. Exact same thing. Okay? So what did God say? He says, I'm gonna pass judgment on him is what he's doing. When he says, but the Lord came down, he's talking about the judgment of God. Go to, Psalms 113. Doesn't mean he literally came down. Now, could it be? It could have been that way. I don't think that's what the reference is to, though. Huh?
I think he was just kind of looking it over like...
Yeah, exactly.
No telling
Well, we'll see in the next verse, too. On our next verse, they'll get a better idea what I'm talking about.
Sorry, 113?
Yeah, Psalms 113, 4 through 5. It says, the Lord is exalted over all the nations, his glory above the nations. Who is... the glory above the heavens, I'm sorry. Who is like the Lord our God, the one who sits enthroned on high, who stoops down to look on the heavens and the earth. So, we see here, God's up in heaven looking down what's going on, alright? That's exactly what's going on.
So that's what we're describing. He's looking down.
He's looking down, but we're going to get a little more into it. Go back to Genesis. Verse 6. It says, the Lord said, if as one people speak in the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them to do. That's what we're talking about. Once unity of the minds of the wickedness, once a man unites, they'll try to do anything to get rid of God. That's what happens. When you get, it's like an atheist, what they do. If you get everybody believing like an atheist, you get them all in unity. That's what's going on here.
So that's what he's saying. See, I've read that before. I never understood it. I thought that anything that we wanted to do, we could do. He's saying that basically they can come up with any way to get me out of the picture, is what he's saying. Well,
yeah, and think about it. If you get unity, that's what I'm saying. Think about, okay, what was the whole idea of communism? Get unity.
Right.
All one purity.
Yep.
Okay. What's the idea of evolution? Right. One pure race, one pure. That's the whole idea. And you get unity. What's going to happen?
We could do anything.
Right. And you can do anything. Well, because basically, what they're saying, unity, anything separate from God. That's what he's saying. It's trying to get God out of the picture. All right. Go to Romans chapter 1. Go to Romans chapter 1.
Well, that's exactly what Hitler wanted to do, was unify.
Yeah, purify the race.
Romans 1.
Uh-huh. We're going to read, we're going to do the whole thing, 18 through 32. It's going to be long. 18 through 32. Okay, I'll read till verse 23, and then I'll let some...
Then can I read the rest?
Sure. It says, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all godlessness and wickedness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Now see right there? From heaven. That's what he's talking about. Let us go down. From heaven, God's wrath. So he's saying he's going to show his wrath from heaven. It's the same kind of principle. See, it's not that he came down. God doesn't have to come down here to show himself, okay? So he's showing his wrath against what? The wickedness. Now, when we look at this scripture, when we look at the scripture, think about who he's talking to here. Okay, when we read this whole scripture, I want you to think about this. Since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, the eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him. But their thinking became futile, and foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like mortal men and birds and animals and reptiles. So who do you think this is a reference to?
Everyone else is like...
Well, probably this is Paul. Who was it who forgot about it? He's going right back here to the. He's talking about it. At one time, everybody knew God.
Right.
He's saying right here, this is the time when everybody at one time. So this reference here has to be talking about from the time of Babel. This is what he's saying. Now they knew him, so from heaven, the wrath of God is revealing the wrath of God. Everybody knew him. We can't say that to everybody now. Not everybody now. You can also look at Sodom and Gomorrah too, because we saw that in Jude. They were apostates, meaning that they knew God at one time. But Sodom and Gomorrah also was that far along from Babel.
Right.
See? So this, I believe, in reference to here, is talking about the reference to that time. We'll keep going on. Verse 24, Ryan.
Therefore God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. Because of this, God gave them over to shameful lusts. Even their women exchanged natural relations for unnatural ones. In the same way, the men also abandoned natural relations with women and were inflamed with lust for one another. Men committed indecent acts with other men and received in themselves the due penalty for the perversion. Furthermore, since they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, he gave them over to a depraved mind to do what ought not to be done. They have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They are senseless, faithless, heartless, ruthless. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them.
Okay, so those people in Romans right there, we saw it was God, so the same thing. He says, let us go down. God's revealing his wrath from heaven. That's exactly what we're seeing here, but the wrath will be his judgment that we're seeing from heaven. Who was he talking to? They all knew God there in Romans. And what did it say? They knew it, and yet they continue to do it. Same thing. And the same thing here in the tower. Same thing in the tower. They said, let us make our own God, saying that they must have known about God. Let us make our own God. We don't want that God. See, all these people knew God. The exact same thing. No different than and the further it gets away, the further we get away from God. So God has to keep repeating everything over again. Isn't it funny how quick this happens?
Yeah.
Okay? Two, you got to remember, from Genesis 1 to Genesis 11 is covering about a 2,000-year period. Okay? The rest of it, the next 39 chapters is covering about 400-year period. So this is all crammed in a 2,000-year period. We've already had this all happen. Okay? Think about this, okay? Back in Genesis, verse 7, says, come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. All right? So, Proverbs 21:30.
I have a question. Who is Lord talking to when he says that?
That's a good question. We're going to get in that one next.
Because I know that Jesus hasn't, been born or anything yet. Was he talking to, the Holy Spirit?
Okay, but... Okay, well, no, that's a good question. If Jesus isn't born, where is he?
He's the angel of the Lord.
Where is he? No, it doesn't say anything about him coming down there. He's in heaven. He's God.
That's the thing, he's always there.
Okay, so that's a good question, because we're going to get in that one next. That's a really good question. I'm glad you picked that up. But the point is, I want you to understand that. Where is Jesus? It doesn't matter if Jesus is born or not. Or who is Jesus? He is God. So always remember that. Jesus only became a man to take about sin, but he's God. So always remember that Jesus is God.
It's kind of like there was no real name for that third part of God, that third part of the Trinity until Jesus was born, kind of thing.
That was the name that was given to him as a man when he became Son of Man.
There's a name for him. There always was a name for him. It was Christ.
No, there wasn't always a name for him in heaven. Is that what you're referring to? He's always been Son of God.
No, because
Okay.
it refers to him as like the angel of the Lord, or something like that. But like now, like when people talk to the Trinity, it's like Christ, it's Jesus, like that. It's like
Right. We know that he was the Son of God.
Designate name kind of thing.
Right.
When he was here on earth, he was fully man, fully God. So that
Remember, he said, you will call him Jesus. Christ means anointed one. Okay.
I think that's what she's kind of.
Okay, no, that's a good question. We're going to get to that. The point I'm trying to say that that's a good question. Isn't born yet, but why? Because understand, remember back in Genesis 1, Elohim, and then the God we talked about, who was it? Remember we talked about that? Who was Yahweh back there?
Christ.
It was Christ. Who was it was walking in the garden with
That's
him?
right, 'cause it didn't have
It was
angel.
Christ.
Right.
Okay?
Angel of the Lord is usually Christ.
Right? But it didn't say anything about angel of the Lord then. Okay? It didn't never said mentioned back in Genesis 1, never mentioned angel of the Lord.
Right.
We see him as angel of the Lord. But the point is that the point I'm trying to tell you, I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. Let's understand the Old Testament is about Christ. That's what it's about. Okay? So that's a good point.
It's always about Christ.
It's always about Christ. And the cross. So that's a good point. We're going to get to that. So go to Proverbs 21:30. Proverbs 21:30. Yeah, it says, now remember what he says, it's going to go down there and change their language. 21:30 says what?
There is no wisdom, no insight, no plan that can succeed against the Lord.
Okay, so man's going to, they think, that's exactly what's going to go on. They're going to succeed against the Lord. So God says, really, watch this. I'm going to go down and confuse their languages. They have one language. Okay, I'm going to go down and confuse their language. Now, as you ask, go to Psalms chapter 2. Psalms chapter 2. Here's the question you asked.
I'm sorry, guys.
Chapter 2.
Verse
1 through 5. Okay, now watch what it says. Why do the nations conspire and the people plot in vain? The kings of the earth take stand and the rulers gather against the Lord and against his anointed one. Let us break their chains, chains, they say, and throw out their fetters. The one enthroned in heaven. The Lord scoffs at them. Then he rebukes them in his anger and terrifies them in his wrath, saying, now I've installed my king on Zion, my holy hill. Who's that talking there?
The Trinity.
That's the Trinity. In heaven.
And they're laughing.
About it. So it's like, basically from heaven he says, let's go down. God's always down there. Another reason he can use let's go down, I want you to think about this. There's a lot to that. Don't forget there wasn't the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. The Spirit's always there. The Spirit of God's always everywhere.
Step down from his high place.
Well, it could be a reference right now. The Spirit walks, we're walking, even though he's here all, during that particular time, there wasn't the indwelling of the Holy Spirit. He didn't dwell within people. Okay, so we have to understand that.
Only at the Pentecost.
Right. So we have to understand that. So some of the references to when they're making that in the Hebrew language.
That gets a little complicated.
Yeah, it can get a little complicated. All right. So what we see here, what you're asking about, was in heaven. We saw them in heaven. Okay, they're talking in heaven. Say, look, they're just like here. They're conspiring against us, and God starts laughing. They got to be serious. They think they're going to build a tower to heaven. I mean, they're like laughing about it. Okay, let's
And the irony sometimes.
So God kind of waves his finger. Okay, here I'm going to give you a different language. Think about it. Honestly, think about it. You know what I mean? We think of it in human terms. Like God's friends. Oh, what am I going to do? Yeah, right. He just waves his little finger, and then that's it. It's done. So but see now you notice God does. What does he do? What's the judgment he does there? Go to Jeremiah chapter 44. Kind of gives the same idea. Jeremiah chapter 44.
I'm sorry, 44?
Verse.
We're going to look at 27 and 28. 44, 27, 28.
I got it.
Okay.
Can we read?
Yeah, go ahead.
For I am watching over them for harm, not for good. The Jews in Egypt will perish by sword and famine until they are all destroyed. Those who escape the sword and return to the land of Judah from Egypt will be very few. Then the whole remnant of Judah who came to live in Egypt will know those words.
Knows whose
Know
words.
whose word will stand, mine or theirs.
See? So basically, I'll confuse their language. It's my word that stands, not yours. See, men come together, and we have one unity. God says, really? We'll see whose word stands. Here, I'm going to separate your language. It doesn't stand anywhere. It's my word. See, God's the only word. It doesn't change. See, you know what I'm talking about? Pretty interesting to see that. He'll divide. We get together and think God will take away anything. It's my word that stands. Your word. Look, this is how strong your word is. Watch. Now you're speaking a different language. That's what he's saying.
Well, think about how
Right?
he did this. He changed one simple thing. Just
Right.
one.
Uh-huh.
And it destroyed everything.
Okay? And then another thing, too. Think about how complicated languages are. Okay? So only by God can it be created. So people don't believe in creation. Think about that. Yeah, I was a caveman who started going, ooh, I came with a different language. Come on. That's absolutely ludicrous. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, overall, we'd still be trying to figure out the first language if that was the case. Okay? But the point is that what he's telling you that, look, my word stands. My word alone stands. It is my word. And I will change the language. And he did. And that's exactly what he did. So that was his judgment. It wasn't a big, huge. It says, okay, basically we'll scatter them across the earth. So what happens at this point when he changed their language? They scatter. And what did he tell them to do to begin with? Scatter. So you're going to end up doing what I say anyway, right? So what did he confuse? And he scattered them because of their disobedience. All right, so they did it. Verse 8 back in Genesis. So the Lord scattered them all over the earth, and they stopped building the city. Okay, didn't he tell them that 9:1, go and be fruitful, okay, and go across the earth? So that's what they did. They didn't do it. So, okay, well, I'll make you do it. Right? Basically what it says, okay? Verse 9. That's why it was called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there, the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth. So that's where we get the table of the nations right here. Now, the word Babel, okay, we all know, and it become known for the Jews, is the word confusion. Okay, this is very interesting though.
You're babbling on, basically.
Huh?
Yeah.
Well, we got Babylon comes out of that, but we think of Babel as the word confusion. But the root word, okay, from it also means Bab. The word Bab, when you break it down, is gateway and El God. So it means the gateway to God. The Tower of Babel is the gateway to God. They were building their gateway to God.
Their God.
Right. The gateway to God. So that's what I mean. Babel, a gateway to God. See what I'm saying? So God's confused. You can't get to me. Okay? Just like, they think they're going to whatever, get to God. Right. Basically,
Also, if you really think about it, the English word for Babel is kind of like the
Right. So not only that, but it means gateway to God, like I said, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's the gate. So this tower they were built, they think they were building a gateway to God. So in other words, it's the same thing Jesus says there's two roads one person takes, right? There's one that leads to destruction, and there's the narrow way. They were building a gateway to God. They're God. Yeah. They're road of destruction. Yeah. That's what Babel, the Tower of Babel. I'm building a gateway to God. My God, the God I made. See, that's pretty interesting when you look at that. All right. Also, like I said, most that all religions, if we studied that, we got real deep into it. We're not going to. Your New Age movement, all false religions, okay, it comes from Babylon. It's the mother. Go to Revelation chapter 17:5. It's not that religion. The religion they were practicing them isn't the religion that the Babylonian religion means. All false religions Babylon is the mother of all religion. Okay, a false religion. Go to Revelation 17:5. 17:5.
Want to start earlier or at 5?
Let's see.
This title was written on her forehead.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Start from there.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. This title was written on her forehead: Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth.
She was the mother of the great, mother of the prostitute, mother of the great, mother of Babylon. So, well, it's a mystery religion. Remember we studied that. We don't know. We don't know what the religion is at that time. There's going to be a religion during that time, okay, that we don't know. But the point is that all Babylon, that time right there, and we're going to look at that, comes, and you'll see why it's a woman too. It's really interesting. But it's a reference to a woman, right? Okay, it's going to come from a woman. So all false religion that we have known now comes from out of the Tower of Babel.
Right.
Okay, from New Age to any of it. There's nothing new. All the idol worshiping and everything started from there. All started right from there. All right? Now let's go back into Genesis. We're going to go to chapter 10 real quick.
Genesis 1:10.
10, 8 through 12. Karen, you want to read that for me?
Yes. Cush was the father of Nimrod, who grew to be a mighty warrior on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. That is why it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, in Calais, in Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria, where he built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Kala, and Resen, which is between Nineveh and Calah. That is the great city. That's a weird name.
Okay, so what we see is here, certain things we see right here was who? Cush. Okay, Cush was the father of Nimrod. All right. Now I want you to know Nimrod was the dictator. This is the only time there's many names for Nimrod. The only time ever mentioned in the Bible. There's a lot of extra biblical things written about him. Okay, so we get other information from other sources about Nimrod. All right. Okay, the word Nimrod. This is what the word means in Hebrew. It says, "We will rebel. Let us revolt." We will rebel, let us revolt.
Nimrod means that.
That's what it means, okay? It's a Hebrew name. We will rebel, let us revolt, okay? Now, you notice one thing too? Babylon, he was what?
The center.
It says the centers of his kingdom were Babylon. And what else? Where else did he go? Assyria. Who, to begin with, I want you to notice with Israel, who took and enslaved them? Both who? Babylon and Assyria. Okay, both of those, right? And then out of Nineveh, remember how bad Nineveh was? Okay, so who was the king of all this right here? Nimrod. Okay, and what is his name? Okay, and who was Nimrod? Now think Nimrod was guy, what was he trying to do? Unite one united nation, one world with one language. One world, one nation. So we see that? And who was he? Who was he against? And guess what? Who did he enslave? Who did he enslave? Both Babylons and Assyrians enslaved the Jews. Okay, who is the Antichrist against? Who is he chasing in Revelation? The Jews. And it was the Babylonian thing. Here's another thing I want you to know. Where is Babylon?
Muslim nations.
Maybe Iraq. And who do you think it is?
Muslim nations.
Okay, but what kind of people do you think those are?
Arabs.
Nope. Who's Cush? There you go.
What?
Egyptians. Kush world.
See, a lot of people, we always think Iraq. Really, the root of them is Egyptian. Not.
Now say that. Just say that again.
Okay, Cush. If you look at Cush and them, they came out. They're Egyptian. They came out of the Egyptian, not Arab. So we always think of the Iraqians. Really, the root of the Iraqians and Iranians, even when you go, is Egyptian.
Yeah, because Egypt is the world, right?
Well, no, because when you follow this whole thing, you'll see where Cush was. We'll get further. If you look on, we went back to see Cush, where he came out of. Cush, remember, Put and Canaan. It talks about where, if you look at where those countries are, that was Egypt. Okay, what's that, Corey?
I was to say the only real Arabs are from Saudi Arabia.
Right. And what kind of breaks off? Like actually, your Palestinians that we think of Arabs, technically the heart is Egyptian. Okay. Okay. When you know Hagar.
That's the beginning of time.
You know Hagar. We always think Ishmael. Okay.
She was Egyptian.
There you go. Who was her son? Ishmael. And why do we?
He started Arab.
But he started there, didn't
It
he?
all comes from Egypt.
But who was it? Who are they? Egyptian.
Oh.
See my point? Pretty interesting, huh? That's why I want to go through the nations. When you go through the nations, in other words, we get some ideas. We're always talking about the Palestinians being Arab, but technically they're not really Arab. Technically they're really Egyptians. They come out of the Egyptian. When you go back to the whole thing, even the Arab nations and stuff came out of them. Okay, but technically no.
Because when Abraham and Sarah were there, and Pharaoh was like, "You guys are cutting it too much trouble," and he sent them away with all that stuff, and he sent them away with slaves.
Right.
Hagar was Egyptian.
Right. So then that kind of make a big difference when you start thinking of things?
Yes.
Okay, now, another thing, let's look. So we see Nimrod is named, we will rebel, let us revolt. All right. Also, it says right there, what it says back in verse chapter 20, he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Okay, that is what it said.
Are you in chapter 10?
Chapter 10, is that what it said? He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. All right. So, mighty hunter, he was a warrior before the Lord, means that the Lord recognized that he was a mighty warrior. Okay, that doesn't mean that his character was favored by the Lord. It implies that he was a conqueror of men. We're going to look at that. Go to 1 Chronicles 1:10. We look at that. Yes, he was probably a great hunter, but that's not referring. When you look at that, you're thinking a hunter of animals, and they would respect. Doesn't mean the Lord respected him or put favor on him. He recognized he was a mighty warrior. That's what it means. Chronicles 1:10. First Chronicles, yeah.
1:10.
Says right here, Cush was the father of Nimrod, who grew up to be a mighty warrior on earth. All right? A mighty what? Warrior. So he was a warrior. See? So when they say hunter, we get the idea that if you look, he was a hunter of what he was men. He was a hunter of men. He was ruthless. He was a hunter of men. So when you kind of look at that, people think you're thinking a hunter of animals. He was a hunter of men. He was a mighty warrior. Hunter of men. Like a dictator.
Basically, he's a scary man to be
You see, when you have dictators, he was a ruler, he was a dictator. He was a hunter of men. See what I'm talking about when you put all this together? Okay? Now, he leads the world at that time, in a rebellion, in a one-world government, dictated under a unified world. See exactly what's going on here? So you see what's happening?
It's very Revelation.
Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. He also went to Assyria, like we saw, another great empire. So both, like I told you, both Babylon and Syria enslaved Israel. Both were enemies of God's people. This is why he is a foreshadowing of the Antichrist. Now, watch this. This is really blow your mind. We'll give you some good examples of this. We're going to look at some comparisons. All right? So, we see in 10:9, he was a mighty hunter, a mighty warrior. Right? We see that in 10:9. Okay, someone go to 1 Peter 5:8. Okay, he was a mighty hunter. Someone go to 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8.
I got it.
Okay. Uh-huh.
It says, be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour.
Okay, so we see a comparison of him and Satan. Okay, he was like, what was he? He was looking for people who was devouring the world. He was a mighty hunter. What is the Antichrist going to be in Satan? He's the what? Okay, now another thing. He was king of Shinar, or of Babylon. Okay, someone go to Isaiah chapter 14.
Verse
4 through 20. Someone read 14, 4 through 20.
You will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon. How the oppressor has come to an end. How his fury has ended. 14:4.
Yeah, 14, 4 through 20.
Oh, I'm sorry.
4 through 20.
The Lord has broken the rod of the wicked, the scepter of the rulers, which in anger struck down peoples with unceasing blows, and in fury subdued nations with relentless aggression. All the lands are at rest and at peace. They break into singing. Even the pine trees and the cedars of Lebanon exult over you and say, now that you have been laid low, no woodsman comes to cut us down. The grave below is all astir to meet you at your coming. It rouses the spirits of the departed to greet you. All those who were leaders in the world. It makes them rise from their thrones. All those who were kings over the nations. They will all respond. They will say to you, you also have become weak as we are. You have become like us. All your pomp has been brought down to the grave, along with the noise of your harps. Maggots are spread out beneath you, and worms cover you. How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of the sacred mountain. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. But you are brought down to the graves and the depths of the pit. Those who see you stare at you. They ponder your fate. Is this the man who shook the earth and made the kingdoms tremble? The man who made the world a desert, who overthrew its cities and would not let his captives go home? All the kings of the nations lie in state, each in his own tomb. But you are cast out of your tomb like a rejected branch. You are covered with the slain, with those pierced by the sword, those who descend to the stones of the pit, like a corpse trampled underfoot. You will not join them in burial, for you have destroyed your land and killed your people. The offspring of the wicked will never be mentioned again.
Okay, so what we see going on there, he was a king of Babylon. This is a prophecy directed at the king of Babylon, which speaks of a future king of Babylon, which is Satan and the Antichrist. It's a prophecy also of the falling out of heaven. Okay, we see when he fell out of heaven. It's a future prophecy. So we see the king of Babylon represents Nimrod. And what did he do right here? He rebelled against God. What's his name? Rebel against us. Okay, a third thing that Nimrod, his name meant we will rebel. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Let's see. I think 2 verse 3. See 2. Yeah. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for the day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed. The man doomed for destruction. Now here what's the Antichrist referred to as? The lawless one. What is that? We will rebel. The rebellious one. He's called the rebellious one, right? So now we see the similarities. Also, he leads the world government. Okay, that's what he's doing here. Let's go to, we'll only read one of those. Revelations 13, 1 through 9. Revelation 13. Okay. 1 through 9.
And I saw a beast coming out of the sea. He had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on his horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear, and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was astonished and followed the beast. Men worshipped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshipped the beast and asked, "Who is like the beast? Who can make war against him?" The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies, and to exercise his authority for 42 months. He opened his mouth to blaspheme God, and to slander his name and his dwelling place, and those who live in heaven. He was given power to make war against the saints and to conquer them. He was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the book of life, belonging to the Lamb that was slain from the creation of the world. He who has an ear, let him hear.
Okay, so see the shadow of that one? He leads the world. He was leading back then in unity, a world, exact same thing, putting everybody. Now what's happening here? He comes out of the sea, what? Out of the nations.
It perfectly mirrors.
He unifies the nations. Yeah. So Nimrod is a foreshadowing
of the future.
Exactly the same thing what we see in the Antichrist. He's an Antichrist. What did he do? He was leading what? What did he do to the people? Away from who? God. And to do what? To make their own God. Who is he going to make to be worshipped? Him as God. Right. See the distinction between that? Also, he was the founder of Assyria. Isaiah 10:5. Isaiah 10:5. Okay.
Woe to the Assyrian, the rod of my anger, in whose hand is the club of my wrath.
Okay, go to verse 12, same chapter. 10:12.
When the Lord has finished all his work against Mount Zion and Jerusalem, he will say, I will punish the king of Assyria for the willful pride of his heart and the haughty look in his eyes.
And then verse 20.
In that day, the remnant of Israel, the survivors of the house of Jacob, will no longer rely on him who struck them down, but will truly rely on the Lord, the Holy One of Israel.
So, what's that's a reference? That's another prophecy of the Assyrian. That's another name for the Antichrist he was referred to as the Assyrian.
Yeah.
Another name for him was the Assyrian. Okay, you see right there, in verse 20, in that day the remnant of Israel, the survivors, the house of Jacob, will no longer rely on him who struck them down. Okay, so God is going to strike them down. And what happened to the tower? What did God do? He's the one that stopped what he did. I scattered them across the nations, and God again, the exact same thing. See how it foreshadows everything?
I have one more question for you. To the tower, I don't know if it's later on or whatever, but I always heard that it was destroyed, it was brought down, and that's what shook everyone, and that's why they all scattered. Is that?
You mean like an earthquake?
Well, yeah, that's what I
No, I don't. It doesn't say that. We don't know biblically if that's.
Okay.
I haven't seen it. You know,
that's what I'm saying.
biblically, there's stories on what happened. You know what I'm saying?
So, from what we read, that it's still standing, right?
Everybody scattered at that point. Well, it says they stopped building it.
Right.
One thing you know, it says they stopped.
Right.
So we don't even know if they completed it.
Okay, but something of it would still be standing.
Yeah, they found a lot. Like I said, they found all kinds of evidence of it.
They literally just walked away from
Sure,
being done.
sure, but obviously there was ones who stayed there, kept that language. You remember, it was like, see, there would have been these, still the people who spoke that language at that time. Not everyone. So that's where we're starting all the other nations.
I see.
See what I'm talking about? So what would happen is if, let's say you were speaking Chinese, now how many millions of people were in then days? I had to find somebody else. So they just start, oh my gosh, I got to find new people to speak. If you don't speak it, they go here, and everybody's going around until they... Right. Yeah. So they're trying to find out what language. That's how they end up gathering in these nations. So now they're going, well, we can't, with these people, we can't communicate. Right. So they end up getting their own land. Well, they're living there. Right. I can't live here.
So everyone's separated.
Right. You can see how it can happen, right?
Yeah.
Does it make sense like that? Yeah. So the thing is, now we see what? The exact same way when he comes the same thing. He comes out of the nations to unify the exact same thing. And what does God do again? They won't rely on him anymore. Okay, because he's going to conquer them, just like he did what? He did the same thing with right there in Babylon with Nimrod, all right? And then, all right, so what we'll do is, that was the end of that, but we'll just kind of go over this a little bit. Okay, Nimrod was also the object of worship. What we have to understand, and extra biblical things, he was, there's other writings on Nimrod, for instance, it has different names. He was an object of worship. Okay, he was like a god, and this is how this comes about, okay? Nimrod had a wife. Okay, his wife was named Samaris. You don't find her written here. Well, actually, there is some people who think of certain people in the woman in the Bible. Okay, and these are other writings about stories of Nimrod. All right,
Historical writings.
historical writings. Okay, his wife Samaris was also his mother.
Oh,
A lot of people believe that Samaris' wife. That's what a lot of people believe. So it was ancestral. Antichrist, remember?
Yeah,
ancestral.
right.
Okay. Yeah, well, there's a lot of things.
What's how the Antichrist
This is why a lot of people believe the Antichrist, when he's born, will come ancestrally. Because how was Christ born?
Immaculate.
Right. So he's going to come through, right? Ancestral. See, there's a lot of that. That's where a lot of this believes.
Makes sense.
Right, it makes a lot of sense. So a lot of people believe Samaris was the mother. Okay, and at his death, he died at his death. Okay, she devised a scheme to cover up Nimrod's death, all right? Because she was having an adulterous affair on the side. She didn't want people to know this. Now, we got to understand, those people understood the prophecy before about through a woman, the saving child is going to come, right? So now think about it. You got Nimrod, is this great dictator they worship as God. This is how he becomes a god. He has Nimrod that she glorifies. She makes a story. She's now pregnant. He's dead, but she's pregnant. Okay? But from how? An adulterous relationship. But, so, this is...
She makes it seem like a miracle.
Right.
Right. Exactly. Okay, at the time she had a relationship, and she had named her son, the son who was born was named Tammuz. All right? That was his name. All right?
Is there a meaning behind the name?
Not that I know of, Tammuz, okay? Like I said, she probably knew of the... She did. They knew of the prophecy written before. Okay, so this is kind of the point I'm trying to get to. So she sets herself up as a virgin. Okay, she sets herself up as a virgin. Okay, to give birth to this God. All right. So she's the queen of heaven. Okay, we're going to look at some of these religions. She becomes the queen of, and is worshipped as the queen of heaven.
So, did everyone not know that his wife was his
No,
mom?
probably not. Who knows? Okay, well, think about the pharaohs and stuff. Did the same thing.
Actually, it was
Something to think about it.
because it was the bloodline. They had the
Right.
bloodline here.
I mean, that's like a little redneck-ish.
Okay, now Tammuz, the son Tammuz. Okay, his name became the god of was called Meda. He was reborn of the reborn god Nimrod. So Tammuz was the virgin birth, reborn. When he was born, was the reborn Nimrod. Well, no, it was an immaculate birth, just like Jesus.
Right.
And who was the queen? We're going to look at this.
So Nimrod was reborn again.
Right. Tammuz, her son. So what really happens, in other words, here's this woman. She has an affair, right? The son dies. Nobody knows it. She's going to cover this up.
Well,
She makes an excuse of how he dies. She has this adulterous affair to begin with. Okay. She's pregnant. She makes a thing up. Okay. I'm an immaculate thing. And now the son that's born, Tammuz, is the rebirth of Nimrod, who becomes the god. What's his god's name? Marduk. All right. Was worshipped as the sun god. Who was the sun god? The Egyptians worshipped him. Ra. That was another name.
Right.
Ra, okay? But see how, there was many gods. But he was worshipped now. So the god, the sun god, and she was the queen of heaven because, okay? All right?
That's some sick stuff.
Well, is it really? But watch some of this, okay? So it was from Babylon the worship